Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I'm continuing on with my awesome games from A to Z, and today's letter is M. Now M surprisingly had a ton of games. In fact, well, when I decided to start doing this, I had this fear that there's going to be a lot of letters that are going to have like not many titles. In fact, as I'm getting up in the alphabet, I'm starting to think those letters are coming up. But so far I've been pretty good finding a lot of titles. This one is no exception. In fact, I think this one's probably going to have the most. Maybe. I'll see when I get to S. Or maybe P. Or S. I don't know. Whatever. So M has a lot of titles. And strangely, they're all, well, not all, but a lot of them are Atari titles. So this is exciting. So usually I start with the Atari because I always figure, you know, the Atari is going to be like some of the earlier titles. And then I move on to like Intellivision, Nintendo, and all the other things. So let's start with the Atari because I got a big stack of games here. Like big stack of games that I'm going to start off with. A little bit more than that, actually. So the first one I'm going to start off with is MASH. I just did a first time playing on this game. And I was quite surprised in how much I actually enjoyed the game. It's a 20th Century Fox. I don't know if you can see that. That's probably not going to be visible. But it's a 20th Century Fox game. They did a lot of stuff based on movies and TV shows and all that other stuff. And this was actually quite fun. I mean, you have multiple different kinds of games you could play. You got 1 and 2 players. You could do a helicopter thing where you're rescuing people on the ground. You're rescuing people parachuting, and there's even a surgery part of it. I mean, that's the whole thing of MASH, right? They were like this, you know, the medics and stuff, and they saved people during the war. So it's actually a pretty decent game. I actually like playing this one. Check out the video. You probably go through my list of videos. You'll probably find it there. The next one I was going to talk about is Miss PacMan. Now, yeah, PacMan. It's a PacMan game. But the good thing about Miss PacMan is this kind of saved the Atari from the dreaded original Pac-Man that was originally released on the Atari. And I'm not going to say that it was that bad. I mean, I liked Pac-Man. I played it and stuff. I didn't mind it. But it was so far away from the actual Pac-Man game that we saw in the arcade. You know, it didn't look anything like it. It didn't sound anything like it. It didn't play very well. The ghosts were all the same. This kind of made up for that. Miss PacMan actually did a good job. And for the fact that it came out on the exact same system, just showed that there was a lot more potential that the Atari could have had compared to some of its earlier games that were released. Perhaps when they gave the programmers a little bit more time. This one actually says 1987, so that just tells you, you know, this when this one was released. I don't know if that's the actual release date of the game or if that's just the specific cartridge, but 87 sounds about right because that was around the time when they really started to get their stuff together and they were like, you know what, we need to spend more time actually making the games right. Another game I want to throw out there is Moon Patrol. And I played this game not only on the Atari, but I played it on the Commodore 64. In fact, I think that was my first try at this game was on the Commodore 64. But it's a classic title. It's a classic arcade title. You're this little moon buggy. You're jumping things. Things are shooting at you and all that other stuff. It's a fun game. I think a lot of people really enjoy this game, Moon Patrol, on the Atari 2600. In fact, any system that this game ends up on, I think it's a fun game. There was even some other games that were very, very similar to it, kind of like the James Bond game. And I don't know, there was a few more that not coming to mind right now, but there was a few more that were definitely like Moon Patrol. You know, now I think of it, BC Quest for Tires. I've done a video on that one too. That one kind of has a Moon Patrol element to it, kind of fun. Moving on to one of my favorite games on this system, Midnight Magic. Again, I think this one came out a little bit later. This was like 1988. I can't see the font. It's so dark and whatever. But this one did come out a little bit later. Probably in 88, yeah. Wouldn't be 98. And I remember actually when I first bought my Atari Junior, this was the first game. This and Keystone Capers were the two games I picked up with my Atari Junior. And I just love this. I love the simplicity of it. It's a pinball game, but it's very simple. It's very straightforward on what your goals are. You're trying to get these little things at the top, and then you change the color, and you try and see how far you can get. It's got some great sound effects, great gameplay. The physics in the game works. I mean, it's probably my favorite pinball game, I would think, out of most of the systems. This one, and I like the Intellivision one. Definitely my favorite pinball games. And now we're going to move on to another one that's a classic, and that's Mousetrap. This game is a great game on the Intellivision, the ColecoVision, the arcade. It's another one of these timeless classics. But I have a lot of memories playing this one. This was one of those games that I also bought. Unfortunately, this is my second cartridge. Same with Midnight Magic and all these other ones I had to track down at a later date, because all my original cartridges that I had in the box that I bought off the shelf, all are gone. They all got lost during a move. I've talked about this a few times on my video, on my channel. So I did lose a lot of my original Atari games from the early 90s, but I was able to retrace them all back. And I also have it on the Commodore, or sorry, not the Commodore, the Coleco and the Intellivision. And I actually did a comparison video. So if you go back, way back, in several years back in my videos, you'll find a Mousetrap comparison. I think it's several years anyways. But you'll find a Mousetrap comparison video. And I played all three of them. I like them all, but I have a lot of fond memories playing the Atari one. This is actually a decent kind of PacMan clone. Just like this one, Miss Pac-Man. I mean, this plays like a Pac-Man game. But you get to turn into a dog. I mean, you start off as a mouse, but you get to turn into a dog and eat the cat. So it's kind of fun. I wouldn't recommend this if you're a cat fan, because you probably get a little bit depressed on the fact that you have to eat kitties. Other than that, fun game. Moving on, Mario Brothers. Now, this is the Atari 2600 version of it. It also came out on the Atari 7800. I don't have that one yet. I probably will pick it up one day. It also appeared on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and I don't know. Well, I have it actually on the Commodore 64 as well. This was an arcade classic for sure, and this came out around the time just after I believe Donkey Kong Jr., when Mario established his name as Mario and no longer the handyman known as Jumpman, and his brother Luigi joins the scene. So this is before Super Mario Brothers on the the Nintendo with Super Mario Brothers. And so you got this game, which is simply just jumping and hitting turtles. There's a POW switch, which does make its appearance in Super Mario Brothers 2 again. And, the turtles themselves, the little pipes, all the inspiration probably for Super Mario Brothers came from Mario Brothers. And this is the first time they actually learned that he has a brother named Luigi. At least from what I understand, this is where you learn he has a brother named Luigi. I don't recall Luigi being in any of the other games before this. But this is a fun game. In fact, I remember playing it a lot on my Commodore 64. And, actually, I think this was the game I wanted when I was a kid. And I probably asked my mom, this is what I want to get when, for an Easter gift or whatever. I want Mario Brothers. And I don't think they had it on the Intellivision, which was the system that I had at the time. In fact, I don't think there ever was a Mario Brothers on the Intellivision. There might be like a homebrew version of it that I'm unaware of. But as far as official release, there wasn't one. And so I ended up getting Donkey Kong, which I love just as much. So, I mean, it still has Mario in there, right? But this is a great game, and this is a great game across all platforms. In fact, the Atari 2600 version is actually pretty cool. And also, if you're a fan of Super Mario Brothers, you'll know that in Super Mario Brothers 3, there's like a little bit of a tournament style mode where if you click on the second player, you get to play a Mario Brothers game, and then the loser loses their turn for the next turn coming up. kind of interesting that they did that. Another one I want to throw out there is Miner 2049er. Now, this is a game that I'm more familiar with on the Commodore 64, and I've talked about this game a bunch of times. I really enjoyed this game. Kind of take like a Donkey Kong type of idea where you got to get your guy, you got to climb up ladders, but you actually have to scrub across the floor and complete every single floor where you're scrubbing across it, almost like you're painting the floor or something. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I guess you're mining. I guess that's the idea. You're mining. But you got to touch every ounce of the floor on every level and climb up the ladders. And then when you do that, you advance to the next stage. And there's lots of stages. And this game appeared on the Atari 2600. I don't have the first one. I have the second one, which is Miner 2049er Volume 2. And I have it on, and my experience, again, is on the Commodore 64. You'll notice that I played a lot of Commodore 64 games. This was my first knowledge of the game. And so Part 2 is kind of like, in the Commodore 64, I guess they took Part 1 and Part 2 and blended them together and made one big game. Whereas on the Atari, you had to have 2 different cartridges. So, you know, maybe one day I'll track down the first volume. Now, there is something I have to say about the Atari version. It's very slow and it's very difficult. In fact, you know, when I've talked about this game and I tried to play it, I don't even think I passed the first board. It's very hard. It's very frustrating and he runs really slow. But it's still cool to have, and it's Tigervision. Tigervision is a company that made Atari games, and most of the games on Tigervision are hard to come by, and when you do come by them, they're pretty expensive. And for an honorable mention for Atari, I mean, this is mostly Atari games I'm talking about here. I just want to throw this one out there because it's just silly. Math Grand Prix. I have not talked about this game yet on my channel. Other people have. The No Swear Gamer has done something on this. But yeah, I think I'll probably do something on this. It's just too funny not to like talk about. And it's a little bit of a, you know, it's an educational game where you have race cars that go around a little track and you get further by answering math questions. And I think when you're playing against an opponent or the computer, I don't even know if the computer plays actually, but you got to answer the math questions and then you advance your car a little bit further and further and further and further until you get to the end. Silly game. I haven't actually tried it yet. I bought this a while ago. It's been sitting in my collection and I've yet to actually try it out. But, you know, that's that. Moving on to the Intellivision, I have one title that I wanted to talk about, and that's Microsurgeon. Because I actually did a video on this as well. A lot of these games I've pretty much done videos on already. But this one is interesting because you're actually performing somewhat of a surgery. And it's different from a lot of games that you're used to. This is kind of like playing the board game Operation. In a sense, you know, not as, you know, a little bit different than, say, the Operation scene you get in the game MASH. This one, you're actually a little tiny pod, almost like you got shrunk down into this little pod. You're going through a body. Kind of like the Osmosis Jones, I think it was called. There was a movie. And I think there was a cartoon or something like that. But anyways, yeah, you got to go through this body and you got to fight bacteria and diseases and stuff. You shoot pills and it's a strange game, but it's an interesting game. It's really fun. The graphics on it are really cool. So now I'm going to move on to the Nintendo. Because there's a few titles. There's not a whole lot that I want to talk about. So the first one I'm going to get out of the way is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Now, this game, I believe, started off like this, with the licensing to Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson was huge in the 80s. I always was a fan of Mike Tyson. I mean, who wasn't? The guy would get in the ring and punch the guy out in like less than a minute. The whole thing would be over. Probably people would gather in there for like 3 hours, watch all these little fights, minor fights and all that other stuff, or maybe even longer. And, you know, pay $100 on pay-per-view just to see Mike Tyson come out and punch a guy out in like less than 60 seconds. And that happens in this game as well. Unfortunately, you have to get through a whole line of people just to get to Mike Tyson, which is where the fun comes in. You get to battle all these different characters. You get to fight your way up to the top. And when you do get yourself up to the top, Mike Tyson can come out and punch you out in one shot. It's a fun game, and I think any Nintendo fan already knows this game. This is an amazing game. It did get re-released later on as just Punch-Out, and they took Mike Tyson out. I guess the you know, whatever, the licensing and all that just ran out, and they had to like create a new character called Mr. Dream, and it's completely unbranded. They actually provided on the store, what is it, the Nintendo Online subscription service, where you can actually get it on your Switch now. I'm not really doing that, so I don't really care. But the other one is Metroid. This is a classic, another classic Nintendo title. One that I didn't really get into until much later on. I didn't have it when I was a kid. I didn't have it, you know, growing up. I didn't get it until a lot later on. I found it in like, I guess like a flea market or somewhere. And I started playing it, and I've never completed it. I've never gotten anywhere in it, but it's still a, you know, a solid title. And there's Super Metroid, and you know, I think it's just it's Nintendo. A lot of people think of Metroid. I think it's a really good title. It's something I need to play a little bit more of. I need to like explore it and spend some more time playing. And last but not least is Mega Man. Now, okay, this is the PlayStation 2 one. I've shown this one off a few times. But I really associate Mega Man with the Nintendo. And I remember actually going to the store, to the rental stores, and renting Mega Man 2. And playing it and getting frustrated. I think I even borrowed it from a friend and played it. And, you know, eventually I was able to complete it. But, you know, I haven't done that in a long time. I probably cannot do it right now. I probably have to reinvest my time to actually spend learning the ins and outs of all the levels. But I've always been intrigued by Mega Man. And when it came out on the PlayStation 2, and I had my PlayStation 2, I was excited. I'm like, this has every single one from, what is it, 1 to like 8 or 9 or something, 10 Mega Man games. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience playing most of them. I ended up getting Mega Man 1 on my PC at one point, and I remember that, and I didn't get far on that one either. It's a game I always had fun with, but for whatever reason, I don't spend enough time on. I don't think there's enough time in the day to spend on all these video games. But yeah, Mega Man has been a series that I've always been interested, intrigued by it. There's a cartoon. There's even a trading card game, which didn't last very long, and I never got my hands on any of the cards because it kind of came and went before I even had a chance to even think about it. But, I mean, just the idea of it. I mean, it's a cool character. I even had the little Tiger Electronics Mega Man 2 handheld, which I've did in a video with my handhelds. And I really enjoyed that one. In fact, I thought that was actually a pretty decent handheld because there was a lot going on in it. Anyways, whew, yeah, that's a lot of games for the A to Z series. I mean, I think most of mine, I only have like a small list of them. And I probably could have gone on. I know there was a lot I left out. Actually, there was a ton of games I left out. And I know I left them out. So, throw some down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Go beyond the you know, I talked about the Atari, the Nintendo. I didn't go too much into the Intellivision. I know there's Major League Baseball out there, and that was like the first talking game ever. But throw some comments down below. Throw some suggestions down below. Maybe talk about some of the later games that I missed. Throw them down there. It'd be like nice to talk about it. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Talk to you later.